All right.
Okay, yeah, I
So
think
it's better
people are
now.
saying we're all good now.
Okay.
Okay, and I'm checking the stream. It all looks good from that side as well. So again, guys, welcome to the next Q&A stream. We have a different group of people today, or at least like one different person. Patrick, can you maybe introduce yourself, because you haven't been in the Q&A streams yet?
Yeah, not in the Q&A. You guys might recognize me from the other stream we did where we just kind of played the game for 3 hours. But my name is Patrick Williams. I'm the gameplay tech lead here at Moon. So I handle all things related to gameplay. Sometimes UI, sometimes audio, a bit of all hat kind of wearing programmer. So whatever we need done, I try and usually help out. But yeah, I'll be talking about some fun stuff like farming maybe later. So that was kind of the thing I'm excited about. And I'll be playing here in a little bit.
Great. Oh, sorry, I didn't want to cut you off, Patrick.
You're good.
Okay. Great. So, Corey, are we good to go? Are you guys good to go?
Yes, everything is set up now. So I just wanted to start off, guys. First of all, I just wanted to show off a hardcore character that I have here, just for a bit of fun before we start. So we're actually going to play the game together, but in multiplayer. But I just wanted to show. I have a few hardcore characters here that I've played on live. But I just want to show off this guy here a little bit. Show off. Yeah, so I've done like...
Oh, also, yeah, let's actually mention that real quick before you jump in, because you have a loading screen there anyway. Guys, if you stay in the stream and stay till the end, right, we are giving away 5 keys today. So if you join us, those keys will go out to random people, and we'll share that at the end of the stream, who gets what.
Yep. All right. So, basically, I have like 5 hardcore characters that I've like completed the game with now on hard mode, but I just wanted to show like bit of a crazy character here. So this is a bow character, and their enchants are a bit crazy. They're not min-maxed like for like post-game play system. I tend to like to play the game to the end and do like fresh runs, but like this character is crazy because it has 200% focus gain, it has like 50% crit, lightning damage on every single item, and it's really important here because it has 2 mystic facets, and that means that you're getting tons of focus gain, but you get tons of minus stamina regain, right? So you have to offset it somehow. But yeah, I'll just show this off a bit. You can start talking about stuff if you want now to this in the background a bit.
We can talk about the structure today and what's planned and so on, right? So guys, basically, we are in this interesting state now, right, where we shipped No Rest for the Wicked together. We shipped a bunch of hotfixes and so on, and today a bunch of like we will discuss kind of like the future and how things are going. There's been a million questions that you folks sent in, right? We'll have Patrick and Corey actually play, so that there's a nice stream in the background, right? And you guys can actually see how our own folks perform at playing. And yeah, that's basically it, right? Like we'll just go over everything. We'll hopefully answer every question that was sent in, or the most upvoted ones, and that's basically it.
Sweet.
Alright, I was just adjusting some sound values there for people, so should be a little bit better now. So yeah, I'm just gonna go through here. So this is like a lightning build. It might not seem like I'm hitting for much, but it's all in the rune damage. I'm getting tons of focus gain, and I will just one-shot all these guys instantly with 1 rune attack. It is set up to be max rune damage possible with like a rune ring, rune damage on weapon, and then the max focus gain possible. So you can just go around and spend your time invulnerable with this rune because it has iframes, and then one-shot massive groups like this.
Do keep in mind that if you actually take the time to copy Corey's build here, right, some of that stuff will get changed in patch 1.
Yes. It's all builds should be, just in case anybody's scared by that, all builds will still be like viable in patch 1, but there might be like some nerfs to specific stuff.
All right. Guys, do you want to maybe start? Because then I'll just set up my thing, and we'll
Yep.
start answering some questions and so on.
Let's start properly here.
Yeah, enough showing them good gameplay. Show them bad gameplay from me.
They won't see that, don't worry. No, you always undermine yourself, Patrick.
We're on hardcore, so
better
or not
than you
hardcore,
say.
the hardest difficulty.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay.
Okay.
Folks, I'm like as Patrick and Corey are playing and getting set up and so on. I will just go through the stuff. So we kind of like organize things a little bit, right? We're starting with core systems and direction. There are obviously some huge questions, and people want to know everything, right? So the most upvoted stuff, or the most questions that we got, was the class system. And let me actually quickly explain things on the class system and where we at right now and how we are approaching all of this. And I'll just speak straight from the heart. So regarding the class system, so right after we shipped No Rest for the Wicked together, we did a bunch of hotfixes and so on, right? And then I gave the order of, okay, now we're going into heart surgery, right? Like this was planned a long time ago. We already did quite a bit of work beforehand. But I basically gave the order that internally we're completely officially switching over to the class system. So let's actually go over what that means for players later on. What that means is that we're basically, for all intents and purposes, are getting rid of the old attribute system, right? Our attribute system is kind of similar to what you see in typical Souls-likes and so on, right? And for a long time, we've kind of like been noodling around in our systems team by trying to come up with a different system that gives us the best of both worlds, right? Of what you normally get from a hard class system, but also what you get from kind of like an attribute system, but hopefully without all these kind of like design issues and so on, right? Because normally what you see in an attribute system is that the typical issue is that people don't know or can't know from the get-go, hey, what do I put my attribute points in, right? And then you have this whole issue of, okay, they can't know at the start, they're hoarding attribute points, and that's one group. The other group is just putting stuff in, and then basically needs a respec, right? And you generally usually need a respec because people get kind of pissed off if they put like 200 hours into a character, make like one wrong move, and have to play the entire character again. Then there's the whole hard class approach that is more kind of like used by Diablo. Path of Exile already kind of like went into a different direction, right? But that's like those are the systems that you're kind of like aware of, right? And the problem that we have with that system is that it's just too constraining to us. We want players to have as much power as possible. And so we took it more inspiration kind of like from the Final Fantasy Tactics side. And that is the process that we're currently in. We're basically going through every single class. And let me preface that by saying that you were already kind of able to play a class in Wicked, right? Like if you wanted to play a paladin or a knight or something, right? You could kind of already do that. There was just nothing in the game that kind of like explained to you how to properly put that together, right? What are the runes that make sense, right? What are the enchantments that make sense for this class? How do you wire it all together? So our approach is very much like our class system is kind of like a guideline, but also a progression system. Meaning that with the change to the class system, as you defeat enemies, we have a new progression currency basically. So it's not XP. We're calling it SP right now internally. It's skill points, but that will likely change. And then what will now define your class is not anymore kind of like which attribute points you spec'd into, right? But what will define your build is, first of all, traits. Traits will be your passives. So those are just kind of like defining your playstyle on the passive side, meaning that, hey, you get passive bonuses if you play the class this or that way, and that kind of stuff. Then we have Serum Runes. Serum Runes will replace utility runes for all intents and purposes. So that's like utility runes themselves will be gone, and that whole system will be replaced by Serum Runes. You will be able to equip up to 8 Serum Runes at a time. That's the current thing that we have. And with the SP, you're basically buying that stuff, right? So you're buying traits and you're buying serum runes. And then the other thing that you that defines your build is, well, which weapon did you pick, and what are the runes that you actually have on your weapon. And then with that, the other big change that we are making, that you guys will see in an upcoming PTR, is that we're also changing the entire way the stat screen works. So initially, when we worked on the stat screen, we didn't want to overwhelm players, and basically generalized a bunch of stuff, right? But I think people have been really outspoken on, no, just show us everything, right? We want to be able to do the math and like just show us how every single value and everything affects our character and so on. So that is basically what we're going with, right? Like that we hopefully will still try to keep it readable and nice, but you will get a ton more information on exactly, you know, which values affect your character and how are they tweaked right now and so on. And regarding the class system, so the process that we're going through right now is, because of Wicked's animation commit combat system, it's very similar to a fighting game, right? So as I'm sitting there and I'm designing how the Guardian class should play or the Knight class should play and so on, I'm taking quite a bit of inspiration from fighting games in terms of like the movesets, in terms of the rules and so on, right? So for example, with the Guardian, you go and, you know, figure out, oh, could this be our Shoto character? And that kind of thing, right? Like, so we're looking at what are the serum runes that kind of like support the class well, and then what are the weapon runes that make sense for that class, and how do we want to play that class, right? You will also see the archetypes of every rune pretty soon, so that that analogy is apt, right? So that we're basically saying, hey, so every class needs to have a gap closer or some combo runes or a block breaker or a knockdown and so on, right? And then the idea would be that, and this is the thing that on live I think doesn't work that well yet, is that it's really hard right now on live to kind of like understand exactly how to put your build together in terms of the runes, because you're not getting a lot of information on the runes. And that is one of the things that the class system completely solves. Because it's going to give you all the information. It's going to tell you exactly like what is that rune that is in that weapon, what is the archetype of that rune, and all of that, right? And so what we think will happen is that everybody will kind of like fill up the slots with like, based on archetypes, right? Like you don't need slots where it's like, hey, I have 4 combo runes in my slot, but you'll probably want something where it's like, okay, the first one on, if we think controller, right, on X is like your typical power strike or something, right? Then on Y, you do a knockdown. Then on B, you do a block breaker or something, right? And on A, you do a gap closer, that kind of thing. So it's very much like that. It doesn't have that complexity, inherent complexity that you see in fighting games with like quarter circle moves and so on. But overall, like things are coming along really nicely there, right? Like we're just basically filling up all this stuff. And in terms of design, what I really always love is if all the kind of like dots connect, right? To me, a good game is when all the systems really cleverly work together and all the dots start connecting, right? And everything kind of like perfectly works, like this system perfectly works with that and so on. And a lot of that is what I'm seeing right now in the class system. So yeah, so that hopefully should give people some information on the class system itself. Let me actually check real quick where Patrick and Corey are.
Yeah, we're just having a good time. Just letting you do your thing. I mean, it's a lot of information, and people are obviously scared that. I've seen a lot of people say they're scared about it changing, you know, the core gameplay and stuff, and just we need to let people know that it should be the same game and stuff like that. It's just,
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, the idea is like, hey, if you loved Wicked before, with this, it's just making it clearer and better, right? Like we're not. the idea is that the system changes Wicked vastly to the degree where it's a completely different game, right? But it just makes everything much more easier to understand, and then also much more like it gives the classes themselves much more depth, right? Because we're literally designing with, hey, that particular class, like for example with the knight class, right? We had on the great swords, we had like I think like 5 or 6 combo moves, and that doesn't necessarily make a ton of sense, right? So we're kind of like really trying to just add the depth that is needed, right? So if the knight doesn't have a gap closer, right, then we're looking into that. If if there's a certain play style that people really want from a particular class, we're now kind of like in this process of like just, okay, let's fulfill that, right? Like let's make sure that people can play the class in the way that they expect, and then also can we surprise them with moves that are just pretty bonkers. That's the idea. Regarding the class system and generally the direction and where we're heading right now, let's just kind of like explain. The immediate thing that you guys are going to see from us is patch 1. Patch 1 is a patch for No Rest for the Wicked Together that will not have the class system enabled yet. That is basically just wrapping up all the kind of like, hey, we went through a hotfix period for No Rest for the Wicked Together. But then usually once the hot fixes, like that's more like bug fixes and like fixing like simple balance issues and so on, right? Once that is done, our typical approach has been, okay, now we'll follow up with a larger patch. And that is what we're working on right now. And let's discuss patch 1. So first thing is release date, right? Like, so one of the highest upvoted things was, okay, when is patch 1 actually coming out? Very soon. It's gonna come out this month, so in March. We will share the actual like day pretty soon, but yeah, it's March. You will all be able to play it very, very, very soon. In terms of where we're heading then, right? Or like what is actually in the patch? Let's break that down. So generally what we've seen is that the reception to No Rest for the Wicked Together has been quite phenomenal. We've all been kind of like blown away by how many players have played, how the sales went and all of that stuff, and how it really changed the perception, right? Like Apurva in marketing had this really cool plan where she brought up this whole, hey, we should do a free weekend so that people can just play it and really get into it because the game is already in a really good state. But we wanted people to be aware, right, and just try it. And we felt pretty confident that once people try it, that they're gonna fall in love with it, right, or really find something that they like about Wicked. And yeah, our conversion rates and everything has been great. In terms of what is in patch 1, let's go through that real quick. So one of the immediate systems that you will notice is the comfort system. Let's bring that up real quick. That is also something that is close to, I think, Patrick's heart, because we're basically changing the way the housing works, right? So far, you were able to kind of like buy a house and furnish it and so on, but there wasn't an underlying system yet on, well, why would you play interior decorator or something, right? And we've seen tons and tons and tons of players basically using the houses like warehouses, right?
Sorry, Thomas, just to cut in, a lot of people are saying, some people at least were confused about saying patch 1.0 or patch 1 and 1.0, the difference. So just to be clear.
Yeah, no, that's yeah, exactly. So that's a different. When we there's a difference there. When we talk about 1.0, that's the final version of the game. And patch 1 is just the upcoming patch for No Rest for the Wicked Together. So please do keep that in mind. I understand that it's very confusing terminology, right? But patch 1 is an upcoming patch on No Rest for the Wicked Together. And 1.0 is basically the final version that we are working towards. That will come after patch 1. Let's see. Does that make sense? Yes, patch 1 is not 1.0.
Maybe begs the question as well, is there going to be a patch 2 if we're calling it patch 1?
We'll have to see, right? Like usually we approach it that way, where we throw something out there and then we look at the reception, we look at the telemetry, we look at all the data, right? The goal clearly is for us, hey, we want Wicked to be in a phenomenal spot with patch 1. And we want to bring in systems that we think are dearly needed, right? One of the systems is the comfort system. And let me explain that real quick. Let's actually go through the list real quick so that people get it. So for patch 1, comfort system is, hey, we're changing the way the housing works. Meaning that right now, like you didn't really have a system or progression path or something to the house and to your housing needs and so on, right? And I kind of like shared a little preview already of how the comfort system works, and I kind of like talked about it in interviews before, but let's break it down real quick. So we came up with this pretty clever system where there's a system underlying, like the comfort system is underlying the whole housing system now, where it understands, hey, what are you actually placing in your house? What are the items? Like what is the furniture? How have you stored your stuff? What is the quality of those items and so on? And then in the top right of the screen, you will see basically a comfort grade of your house, right? So it rates your house based on what did you actually put inside your house. And there's 6 different comfort grades, right? So in order to get a better comfort grade, you need to put furniture into your house. And then the better the furniture, the higher quality it is and so on. And also based on how you place it and so on, right? It will you will be able to increase your comfort grade this way. And then the thing that you're actually getting from it is that if you sleep in your house, you will get a bonus, like a buff, or multiple buffs, based on what comfort grade that you had in your house. And what we hope that'll do for the game is that we are hoping that people will go apeshit on this, right? That people will have a really fun time kind of like figuring out, hey, what are the most ideal ways of kind of like furnishing your house, what things to place inside of it, how layouts work and so on, right? So instead of just like making an ARPG where people play their character and it's all just completely 100% about focused on here's your character and so on, right? We want to also kind of like have systems in there where it's not just about, that, where it's also, hey, you have to kind of like do a little bit of something different. While you're taking a break or something, right, it's nice to kind of like go into your house and prepare some things and so on and set this up to kind of like level up your house, basically. Next thing is there were a bunch of balance things that you folks brought up, right? So obviously, like balance is always going to be an ongoing subject, always, right? And we frankly also made some kind of like stupid mistakes, in the current Wicked Together live version, you can get damage reduction at like to 100% or something, right? And that is silly. So those are the things that we're trying to fix, right? Any kind of like thing that was where your builds were become wildly overpowered, enchantments that were kind of crazy, like enchantment power and so on, right? Those are the things that we are addressing. So we're looking at all the ones that kind of like slipped through our fingers for the No Rest for the Wicked Together launch and even the hot fixes. And a lot of these balance concerns we will address with patch 1. And that'll span a whole wide range of things, right? Like that goes from enchantments to weapons to just some stats in general, and so on. There's also things like just how the classes themselves play right now, like the archer, right? Like we didn't have any damage mitigation on distance. So what we saw a lot is that, hey, people played the archer as like an easy mode, where you shot way from the distance, and it didn't matter if you hit an enemy kind of like near you or really far away, you always kind of like dealt the same damage. So those are the kind of things that we are addressing. We're removing some of the cheesing. And another interesting question that came in is regarding the actual design direction. So because people saw a lot of these exploits, let's call it, right? There were concerns or questions regarding if we want to ultimately head into the direction of, hey, is the combat going to be more Souls-like, or are you guys okay with the combat becoming more like what you see in like D3, D4, Path of Exile, and that kind of thing, right? Where it's just, hey, screen wipes and that kind of thing. And it's absolutely the former, right? So I've recently had an interview with Darth Microtransactions on that stuff, where I think what you're seeing here is due to some of these overpowered builds, you're actually seeing how versatile these animation commit combat systems can be. Because even though you do have animation commits, you can still, devolve it into a super crazy OP setup. But ultimately, we always want to keep the combat really intentional and tactical and strategic, and things like timing, positioning, spacing should always matter a great deal, right? And some of the builds that were possible due to some stats, like basically made that irrelevant, right? And that's what we're dialing back on. Usually when we do some tweaks to that, like people will get a little bit nervous, let's say, and will give us some crap because they are really overpowered stuff will not work in the same way anymore. But the idea is that we're tweaking things so that a really good class will still stay viable, right? We're just basically cutting off the edges. Corey, maybe you want to expand on that.
Yeah,
what
definitely.
the direction is for patch 1 regarding balance.
Yeah, so the patch 1 balance, we always, like, the goal was that we still want everything to be basically the same. Basically, like, your build will still be the same. It's just that you won't have 100% damage reduction anymore. Like, we have implemented diminishing returns for damage reduction, so you will be able to still stack it, and it will still matter a lot. And most of the time, like, let's be honest, with the player power right now that we have, you probably will be quote-unquote still invincible, just because of, so many different stacking player power sources that you have. And that's something else that I wanted to bring up as well. So we don't have the current end game of 1.0 right now. So the player power is kind of crazy, because we don't have any end game. Like, we have our end game right now as it stands, where it's like Crucible, but then you have the boons to get even more power, and then you have like the plague system, which isn't in its full form yet. So we don't have any true end game right now to properly show off your builds. So for 1.0, you'll actually have like a big reason to actually have all this player power, right? So you won't just be...
Or that actually challenge those builds, right? Like, if you have a really strong build where everything synergizes and so on, right? Obviously, the goal has to be that there are challenges in that game, in the game that actually need you to have these kind of builds, right? That's the idea ultimately. But yeah, because of early access, we're in a state right now where you guys only ever saw tiers 1, 2, 3. You never saw tier 4, tier 5, tier 6, which will come with the final version of the game. And obviously those will challenge you a hell of a lot more than the current tiers 1 to 3 challenges that are in the game. There was a question regarding endgame loop, whether we'll do infinite scaling or season-based content. So as we're tweaking things right now, the numbers that we're seeing is that just to kind of like max out your character, you will play a good 150 to 200 hours just for that, right? So it will be a game for most people where it's gonna take you a long time to complete, right? We are not doing the thing, or we don't have any plans of doing the typical Diablo or Perfexal model, right? Where it's just, hey, here's your character, and then every 3 months or so we delete your character or move it to a legacy realm or something, right? But we do want to keep the idea open of, hey, there will be different modes and different ways of playing Wicked. And we might even want to run an event at some point or something, right? Right now, the idea is that we'll throw so much stuff at you folks that for all intents and purposes, it will, you will keep playing that one character, especially if you want to go into all the classes and complete everything and max everything and do all the factions and everything, right? Like, it will be an extremely content-rich game and systemic, like really systemic game. But at the same time, like, we never want to say, oh, yeah, we're definitely never going to do this or that, right? Because who knows? Like, we'll have to see kind of like what the community thinks, how they play it, and kind of like keep our doors open for potential things that we want to do. I think we should jump into the next category real quick.
One thing just about bows, by the way, do you want to expand on how we're changing bows a bit? Because it isn't just like, how do I say it, like a big nerf across the board. It's like, bows technically still have the same potential,
Yeah.
but if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, bows are just extremely powerful right now, simply because of the some of those things that I mentioned, right? Like, I'm not like, the idea isn't that we're taking away the kind of like these really fun, powerful builds. And I mean, the bows are something that I set up over the Christmas holidays, right? Like that entire class. So we'll definitely keep the idea of that alive. What we don't want is like players finding ways of like dealing whatever 5,000-6,000 damage or something in one hit, and where you basically optimize the fun out of the game, right? Where you synergized so many things together that you beat even like the level 4 plague system bosses with a few shots or something, right? The game should still always challenge you where you have to engage in a proper way with things. That's the idea. That doesn't mean that you will not still have really overpowered builds or like really strong builds, right? But the idea should be that the build should still be fun to play and should still force you to engage with the systems and not be tuned to a level, or that they can be optimized to a level where you literally like kill bosses in like 2 shots or something.
Yeah, so most of the nerf is probably going to be like, is it fine to say it here? What we're going to do?
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to introduce damage drop off to bows, basically. So you can't just infinitely hit enemies across a crucible arena. Even though they can't hit you, you'll have to like try and go engage with the enemy. Obviously, runes will be strong. It's just the current state of the game where runes are just incredibly strong right now. You can scale them a lot. There's so much focus gain in the game, which we might be cutting back a little bit in the patch 1, but a lot of it mostly will be viable because we want builds to still be in a good state if your current build uses focus gain. But yes, some changes, but most of the bow changes, as I said, damage drop off, so you'll have to engage a bit more.
Exactly. The idea, guys, is obviously like, we don't want to take fun away, right? But we also want to make sure that all the systems work correctly as they should, right? And that we engage you in like really fun gameplay always, without it devolving into, hey, I have a screen wipe stuff. There was a big discussion on that post that I made on X. Why are we adding more modes? And this is also where Patrick will be able to jump in. So let me preface that by saying, obviously we're looking at all the ARPGs out there, right? And ARPG doesn't, to me, in my book, doesn't mean just games like Diablo 3 or Diablo 4 or these kind of like games where you screen wipe, right? But as a whole, ARPG means also games like Dark Souls and so on, right? Like, so we are looking at everything, and generally, what we want to deliver with No Rest for the Wicked is a game that you could almost live in, right? Like, we always had this idea of like turning Wicked into a forever game, and what that means to me is we also need to work on the variety of things that we allow you to do, right? So in other games and even in Wicked right now, a lot of times what you are seeing is that the gameplay loops that exist in the game are kind of like always comprised of the same core pillar, right? Meaning, it's like, hey, do this quest. It's about killing a bunch of enemies. Now do these challenges. Oh, it's about killing a bunch of enemies. Now do this particular event. Oh, it's about killing a bunch of enemies. And we'd like to diversify this a little bit, right? So that we just have, so that we can just throw more fun stuff at the player. And this is a technique that I already employed in Ori, and that I've seen being put to great use by companies like Nintendo and so on before, where because of how our brains work, right, we get bored of things that are too samey very quickly, right? What I would like to do with Wicked, and what we're currently planning already, is that yes, of course, there will always be like lots of challenges and lots of things designed around the combat system. At the same time, we also want to bring things in where it's like, hey, if you actually need a break or want to try something a little bit different, right, that there's places for you to go where you can, inside of No Rest for the Wicked, actually play the game differently. And so one of the things that we can discuss, or that we should discuss, is farming, because that goes into exactly what we're saying. So if I look back, in my childhood, I always, like when I played A Link to the Past on the Super Nintendo or something, right? I always really enjoyed that the game was designed in a way where it wasn't just, oh, you have to finish a dungeon and then you immediately have to hop into the next dungeon and then there's immediately the next dungeon. But it was designed in a way where it was just open, and it gave you that freedom of, hey, I just finished a dungeon and I got an item in that dungeon. And now I was able to kind of like roam around the overworld and progress my character a little bit by finding heart containers and so on, right? And the idea with the adding extra stuff to Wicked is basically to just do that, but on steroids, right? Meaning that if I just finished a quest and it was difficult and I had a brutal battle with the boss and so on, right? That that you could do something different for a while before you go head straight into the next quest. And farming is one of those. We are currently already expanding, like finishing on the expansion of Sacrament. So there's going to be the whole outskirts and everything. Some of you actually already found a few of the expansions that we put in. Because every single time when we put up these invisible walls and so on, people find some ways around them. Doesn't matter how high they are, apparently. But the idea is that we are expanding Sacrament, that we're adding more variety or more opportunities of varying gameplay in there. And the farming system, for example, was something that we tried a long time ago. And I thought it was really funny. Like Patrick, I shared on Twitter recently a video where you actually played with Robin, and that was like 7 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Like, because that farming was always at the like one of the things that we wanted to bring in right from the get-go, and so that was tried already really, really early on. And yeah, maybe you wanna kind of like talk a little bit. I know it's
Yeah.
really tough to play
Yeah.
and talk at the same time,
He's
right? But
already at
maybe
his
you want to
farming
kind of
cool.
like
plot.
share your thoughts on that.
I've literally been standing in the farming plot for like a couple
Oh,
minutes, but
okay.
like you could see this area in Sacrament. This has been a farming plot for, I don't know, since I've been on the project, really, and even since it was white boxed. We always wanted farming to be one of those systems where it's one of those gameplay loops that just feeds into another one, right? Sort of synergistic, where, like Thomas said, you can take a break, come to your town, plant some crops, maybe find some cool seeds that give you buffs that you wouldn't get otherwise, and yeah, just kind of do that fun Stardew stuff that's in the game. Yeah, we've been working on the farming, not like continuously. It's not like farming's taken 7 years. It's just one of those things that we couldn't quite ship for early access, but we've been working on it since like 2020 or maybe even 2019, even when before Ori 2 was shipped, right? I jumped over to the project and implemented some of the cuttable trees and some of the crops you can grow. So it's always been in the back of our minds as something we want to do. We just want it to be good. We don't want it to be one of those things where it's kind of a slog, to like place each individual seed, use each individual tile, like water each individual thing. We're like trying to think of new ways while still keeping players comfortable with things that they've learned from other games. So it's a bit of a balancing act with that. But yeah, I'm super excited for farming to come out. And when we're talking about farming, we're not talking about like, XP farming, blah blah blah. We're just talking about actual like growing crops, planting things, harvesting them, and either selling them or eating them for buffs or maybe other things. Maybe quests are tied. It's still a little up in the air there. But yeah,
Patrick, just out of your interest, like, are you old enough to have played things like Harvest Moon back then when it came out?
I remember when it was out, but wasn't interested in those kind of games when I was younger. So yeah, I didn't get into farming stuff till I was a
So
little bit
what made
older.
you fall in love with it?
Uh, well, I guess Stardew, to be honest, and some other games that have sort of growing things in them. So I mean, all sorts of survival games like Minecraft or Valheim or these other games always have some sort of farming element in them. And I always thought it was cool that it's like, hey, I couldn't really beat that boss, but I ended up brewing this potion from this thing that I grew from a seed I found in a chest here, and it helped me, beat this boss, or make it easier, right? I always thought that that was a fun thing that the games don't really explore. I'm not a huge combat guy. I'm more of like the Animal Crossing cozy sim kind of guy. Not that I don't like competitive stuff. I like FPSs, but as far as these kinds of games go, I really like the cooperative play of everybody sort of like building this town together, and I felt like farming really fit into that pretty well.
I think that actually explains it really nicely, right? Like we basically just want these kind of like experiences that are not just combat, right?
Hmm.
Where the answer to every question in the game is, oh, combat, right? But
Right.
that you literally just have these experiences where, hey, I can go there, I can actually buy a farmers. Oh, we should explain that, right?
Oh yeah.
The farmhouses and the plot and so on, those and how that will work. So we already have the player houses in the game. You can buy a house, and you can stash stuff there and furnish it, and obviously that'll get the comfort system now, right? And the expansion will then have farmhouses. They're kind of like located around Sacrament. A few of them are kind of like on the outskirts. And if you buy a farmhouse, it comes with a plot of land, right? And obviously, there's this whole thing with like, hey, some farmhouses have a larger plot than others, depending on what you need. Um, and yeah, the idea is, well, we're definitely taking inspiration from these kind of things, right? Like from games like
Yeah.
Harvest Moon, Stardew Valley. Animal Crossing has some farming and so on, right? And then the idea would be that every now and then, like as you roam into your town, right, that you can actually engage with those systems and brew some stuff that you couldn't necessarily do in the game and so on. And the idea isn't that we are like that was also one of the concerns that I saw in the forum,
Yes.
that I actually explained. The idea isn't that we force you into every single system that
Exactly.
is in the
Yeah.
game, right? Like it's not that, right? Like we just want to give you the opportunity, that if you are tired of something, that you can do another thing, right? That if you've done too much of X, that you can still have fun in the game by doing Y. Oh, and I wanted to explain that, like in Ori, the trick was always that, was always the kind of like the progression flow, meaning that when you had one section that was about combat, then the next section was about platforming, and that was followed up by a puzzle room, right? And that was followed up by a story sequence and so on. So even in Ori, like we never did this thing where it's like, oh, there's a combat room, and that's followed by a combat room, and then there's even more combat, right? Because of how our brains work, because of, hey, that makes you really tired very quickly, right? And that really, like, I've seen that many times, that if we organize things in Ori where it's just way too much combat all at once, that you kind of like get tired of it and people will put the controller away, right? And you can also see that in games like Uncharted and those kind of things, right? Where it's like there's always a sequence to things,
Yeah.
so that it doesn't become too monotonous.
And I like the idea of Sacrament, or sorry, Sacrament, of No Rest being one of these more open type games. Because, like, for example, my wife probably wouldn't be interested in a lot of the combat stuff, but she might be interested in a lot of the housing and sort of fun farming stuff in the game. And it's kind of cool to have those different kind of gameplays kind of help each other. Because you might have someone who just wants to collect resources, build up the town, while some other person just wants to like do all the bounties, do all the challenges stuff. And you're both technically beating the game together. You're just doing it in different ways. And I think stuff like that is cool. I would love it if we could have like farming quests where you need someone who's good at the game with combat to sort of escort someone who's not so good at combat to some specific tree, like some mystical gem tree or something, and they collect something from that and plant something in the farm, and then that grows some cool end game item for everybody. I think those kinds of things make the game special.
Yeah, I agree. But let's elaborate a little bit more about
Yeah.
what that idea was, because there was a lot of discussions about on X when I kind of like brought up this stuff, right? There's always this concern that if you add different modes to your game, that it becomes this spore situation, right? Where it's like, oh my god, this will literally be a completely different game. But
Mhm.
the idea isn't that. Like the idea is that hey, we built a really strong foundation with Wicked, where it now allows us to do really cool things fairly quickly, right? Like I love that. For example, we're working on a new Crucible mode already. I mentioned that before, right? Like the Horde mode, we call it, which is kind of like, like takes more inspiration from these kind of like Horde modes that you've seen in games, right? Like we just looked at how Gears did it, and then also Vampire Survivors and so on, right? And the goal is literally, well, we changed the way, like when the first Crucible statue that you have there, right, is your typical roguelike experience, right? Here we flip it on the head, where it's not about like, hey, go through various rooms and deal with that, right? But it's like one big arena, and there's just waves and waves of enemies coming, right? And you have to defeat the enemies, and then get yourself a break by defeating these enemies, buy some boons, and oh my god, more waves of enemies are spawning. And then at some point, there's bosses spawning, and then at some point, there's elite spawning, and so on, right? And you kind of like have to keep going with defeating enemies, buying boons, defeating more enemies, buying boons, and so on, that kind of thing. And that we can do so fast now because of, hey, we already have all the meat and potatoes. We have the combat system, we have all the specials, we have the weapons, we have all the classes. And that is just really super fun to see that we can kind of like implement these things rather quickly. And that goes into everything, that permeates basically everything, right? Like if as part of patch 1, the other thing that we're trying, that we're putting in as like a first test in a very sneaky way is a dual mode. So for the longest time, whenever we designed classes, we also had these internal tournaments. I think, Patrick, you guys actually talked about this, right, in your stream?
Oh God, did we? I don't remember.
Yeah, a little
I think
bit.
somebody.
It was, I think it's Chris though that was talking about it, but I wasn't around back then.
Okay.
But yeah.
But yeah, if you want to talk about what we
Yeah.
had, I could talk about that. But yeah, are you
Yeah,
talking
feel
about
free to
duel or
jump in.
like
Yeah.
arena or both?
I mean,
It's
yeah, we'll bring up the duel system,
okay.
right? But you can talk about the arena and the tournaments that we ran.
Yeah, so yeah, that also probably as long as farming, we've had this idea of people wanting to fight each other, right? And those are the pure combat people who probably weren't as interested in farming. I wasn't interested in PvP until I started playing it. And it's just fun to use your abilities that you normally use against enemies against other players. So we had this arena system you would go into, and it'd be different sort of arenas. Like one was like flooded water level, another one was just like a basic coliseum. I don't know in what form we'll actually ship, but it was just fun to mess around and fight other people. Even if you weren't very good, it was still fun to have another sort of live target to fight against. So it's always something that's been in the DNA of our combat system. We don't try and make these crazy awesome moves that only work on like one boss. We're trying to think of like how would this work in a like PvP situation. And
And
you
the
see
reason
people
why
just
we did
doing
that is
good.
because. Oh, sorry, I didn't want
I
to
was just
interrupt.
saying
You
it's
have a
one of those
little
things
bit
you
of
see
like.
naturally is like even me and Corey right now, it's like we're opening a chest and then like he'll get to it before me and I'll just like slap him in the back. It'd be funny. It's just be like, we'll settle this in the arena. I get that item. It's just one of those things that comes with the game.
Which is something that we should maybe bring up. Like, we wanted to do something like a wager system in the PvP arena, and
That'd be
we
cool.
we can do stuff like free for alls, or you can like do team battles in there. You can do like a bunch of stuff, and I don't know if we can talk about yet because we're not really too sure. But we also wanted to maybe think about doing like matchmaking, but I'm really not sure
Yeah.
if we can do that, if it's possible. But something that's maybe on the table.
Well, we've looked into it before and we've prototyped it, and things have changed, and that was a while ago. But it's always something that we've investigated before. So
I mean, to me and to our design team, right, the main reason why we brought in this PvP stuff and so on and made sure that that works is because of what I saw while I was at Blizzard was going on with Diablo 3, right? That there was a PvP mode and it was even tried out at BlizzCon and so on, right? But I don't see how you could make that work in those kind of games. It doesn't, like, it was always nice in in a controlled environment. But once you actually had players playing with their characters, right, and like all these, like, because there's not really like a super strong combat system in those games, because of how the stats work and so on, right, it was basically impossible to get something balanced. But so that's kind of like how we always kind of like wanted to test ourselves, right? Whenever we set up attacks and so on, right, there was a certain rule set of how fast can an attack actually be, right? So that still works with our net code, like what is the minimum startup, what's the, what do we allow in active, what do we allow in recovery, that kind of thing. So that things still remain readable, and so that we don't have, like all of these kind of like skills in there that only work in against mobs and that kind of thing. But basically the goal is really simple, right? Like we want you to have a lot of really interesting experiences so that the end game ultimately in Wicked, so it becomes a game that that you could play for a crazy amount of time, and the end game doesn't become boring in the sense of, oh, every single thing is about combat and the answer to every single question is just more combat. And again, like that will permeate everything, right? Like, so we'll have PvP, for example. I'm sure like especially the competitive crowd is going to love that. You're going to be able to kind of like play against other players. There's the whole farming thing in there. We're doing things like the Horde mode. There was the survival thing that we tried, right? And some of that stuff will not be in 1.0, but like I just want people to kind of like understand the direction where all of this is heading, right? Because ultimately the goal is that we want to just kind of like create this forever game where everybody just has an amazing time in Isola Sacra and has tons and tons of experiences. And even if some player doesn't like a particular thing, right, well, they can go and engage in some other gameplay that they might enjoy.
And some people are mentioning PvP would be hard with, bringing in your own items and stuff. We have played with the idea of like templates, but we don't know what form that kind of thing will have.
It will be, right? Like I don't think like it's never been our design intention that we turn this into an esports competitive thing, right? Because that is going to be possible even with our animation commit combat system, like because of the amount of stats and so on and modifiers that exist in Wicked. That would be like having to balance a game with like tens of thousands of different characters, right? Like a fighting game with tens of thousands of different characters. So that would be impossible. I very strongly feel like, hey, obviously, like we're not going for a competitive kind of like esports angle, right? At the same time, we have people like Alex in the team who spent like 400 hours just playing Dark Souls in PvP, right? And if people get a huge kick out of that, I think that's just a net positive. That's just a really cool thing for people to do.
I just wanted to bring up the Elden Ring comparison as well, like Dark Souls and stuff. It's never been too balanced. If two guys have a sword, sure, it's balanced. But then some guy has 99 barrels and lightning flash buffs, and then like 20 different weapons, and this guy just has a short spear. Like it's usually not balanced in most cases, but it's still really fun. People really love it, so hopefully we can do something like that.
That's the idea. Next thing that always comes up is the console versions. So I've already been a little bit sneaky and shared some stuff recently that I now can't talk about. But obviously we are working on console. So let's actually tackle the whole thing about like consoles and optimization. And maybe Patrick, you can talk a little bit about that, right? Because you've also been part of the whole, like when we polished Ori and had to optimize it, right?
Yep.
That usually that comes kind of like towards the end, right? Like at first, like at least at Moon, what we are very much concerned with at the start and like earlier on is let's make sure that the game is actually really great, right? And then at some point, like more towards the end, that's where kind of like the tech team comes in when the game isn't as much of a moving target anymore, where then we start balancing. And that is currently ongoing, right? So we are obviously working on console ports already. I'm not going to say which ones exactly. But yeah, Patrick, maybe you can share some thoughts on like
Yeah.
what the tech team goes through regarding optimization.
Yeah, so I'm part of gameplay tech, so I have done quite a few optimizations for, like Thomas is saying, Ori and Ori 2, and some for this game as well. But like Thomas is saying, it's in an ideal world, you would be writing optimized code, you would be doing optimized setups, you wouldn't be doing anything that doesn't perform poorly, right? But it's hard to do that when you don't know what your game is. Like, you might know conceptually what it is, but you don't know how many enemies there are, you don't know what this encounter is going to be, you don't know if there's going to be this much art here. I mean, even on this patch, you know, we had to do some like art optimizations that came in late, and we didn't learn that until we started playtesting. So it happens, you know, and it happened with code as well. It's just one of those things where you just have to try it on consoles and just start working at it. Especially on Ori 2 and Ori 1, there was a lot of stuff that did not work well for Switch, that we had to, like, you know, rewrite level loading systems and things like that. So, because that code was written in, like, I don't know, like 2012, some of that stuff. So there's all sorts of things, even like upgrading the engine that can get in the way of a console port, right? Maybe you need to release an old game, but it needs to be on a newer security patch for Unity or something, right? So there's all sorts of factors that come in, especially if you want to support things like different versions of Xbox, you know, a PS5 versus a PS5 Pro, you know, those all sorts of small things like that. And then, yeah, I can go on for it for a while. So
quite enjoy. Yeah, the nice thing that I think people will enjoy is that generally optimization is a huge task right now in the whole team, and that'll just benefit everybody, right? So if we get, and obviously the goal is, hey, we have to get Wicked to run buttery smooth on all these consoles and so on, and consoles oftentimes are not as performant as obviously like your high-end gaming rig, right? But that just means, like, as we go through these optimizations and so on, everybody will get a huge benefit out of it, right? Because these optimizations, for the most part, apply to everything, right? So if we optimize for a lower end system, then the person with the higher end machine will also get a huge boon out of that.
yeah, like optimizing for Steam Deck, right? Like that was our minimum target, you know, and that really helped us like nail something in that we wanted to ship. Especially on PC, there's so many different versions of everything, right? You might have different processors, different GPUs, different. I mean, even people playing on hard drive are going to have a worse experience than people playing on like an SSD or an M2 drive, right? There's so many factors that go into optimization that are even outside of consoles.
Let me just go through
Game
the
dev
list
is
real quick.
hard.
So, yes, it's funny, kind of like how it's just probably a million tasks or something, right? Until you have something, and it's a never-ending stream of issues and problems to solve. So regarding patch 1, I already kind of like brought up some of the systems, right? We'll have a very detailed kind of like breakdown pretty soon with like patch notes and so on, because, you know, you guys will all be able to play it very soon. But yeah, some of the bigger things are balancing and obviously like fixing some of that balance stuff that everybody's brought up, and things like comfort system, the dual system. And the dual system is, just to prepare everybody, right? It's not going to be super balanced or anything, right? It's literally a test that we're bringing in just so we can kind of like get the first stats, see exactly what modifiers we have to apply, and all of that stuff, just so we see kind of like on a more massive scale, hey, where do we stand, right? Like where,
Yeah, to explain duel, it's
right
just
now.
it's like a local PvP. You go up to someone, you challenge them, you fight, right? That's pretty much the gist of it. So yeah, definitely expect the balance to be not perfect, but it'll be fun.
Yes.
So
Yeah, just
but maybe Corey, you can maybe talk a little bit about this.
Yeah, exactly. So I was gonna say it is really fun. Obviously, I'm testing it a lot. It's got a cool dynamic where you can choose to do it anywhere you want as well. So it's like not an arena you need to do it in or anything. So you can do it anywhere in the world, and you know, you can, as Thomas said, it's not gonna be too balanced, but you can set your own balance, right? You can always be like, all right, you can't use runes, you can't do any of this, you can't use consumables, you can't you can set your own limits basically, and maybe in the future we can have something, you know, to facilitate this, maybe. But yeah, it's still fun, and you can make your own fun out of it as well.
Yeah, I like the idea that you could do a PvP in the middle of the sewers with a bunch of rats around you, right? Like, and the rats will be part of the arena. So it's just like a fun thing.
And to wrap that thing regarding patch 1, so obviously, yeah, we're fixing things like infinite damage reduction. The Ember drop rates will get a little bit of a tweak. There were things like misleading enchantments, where people, you know, had some issues with like lifesteal and so on, right? Like those are all things that we're looking at for patch 1. The idea strategically is for patch, you know, like with No Rest for the Wicked together, we want to put the game into as good a state as possible, because that's going to be kind of like the status quo for a while. Simply because we are internally already working on things like the class system and so on, and all of that 1.0 content. And let's actually get into that. So kind of like, let's discuss our roadmap and these kind of things a little bit. So in the most immediate feature, there's going to be patch 1 for No Rest for the Wicked together. That's going to be on the live trunk for quite some time. Then what we will be doing internally, with first a small group and then a larger group, is to do PTR sessions where once we have the class system tweaked to a point where we feel really comfortable with it, right, and where we feel like, hey, this is really good, then we basically will start like doing PTR tests with our community so that they can really kind of like see and understand how the system works, why we went through all the trouble of setting all of this up, and how we made this really, really cool. And that'll basically keep going for a while, right? And similar to Larian, we are and have always planned that that we will not kind of like ship updates, like small updates, until the very end of our early access period, right? The idea is that at some point we kind of like make sure that the game is in a really good spot and people can have dozens of hours of fun, and you know, it is fairly feature rich. But then we're kind of like putting a little bit of a break on it, where we then say, okay, look, a lot of the new stuff is going to be tested in a PTR, so that we can really balance with a smaller group of people, and so that we don't spoil everything and so on. And so that we can then also kind of like hype people up again and make sure that they understand, hey, like 1.0 is not going to be just a patch, right, or a small thing, but it's basically going to be an entire relaunch of No Rest for the Wicked, where hopefully like we will see that, hey, we use the early access period in the way that I think it should be used, right, where we just try to perfect everything, and took in all the systemic feedback and so on, everything that we got. We put in all the new content and everything, right, so that upon 1.0 launch, that people will go, oh my god, like how is it even possible to make a game like that? And you know, like the answer will be, well, we went through an extensive early access period where we just allowed ourselves to perfect everything, so that by 1.0 and, you know, when it then launches on consoles and all platforms and so on, right, that we'll have gone through everything necessary to ship a game as crazy complex as The Rest of the Wicked, in a state where it's like really polished and just really like, you know, where we can all be really proud of it. Let's jump to the next ones. Actually, I haven't watched the stream here. How are you guys doing?
Yeah, good. I'm just trolling
Good.
Patrick a bit, you know? I mean, more than maybe a bit. But...
It's alright, I deserve it after how many times I died during that last boss.
No, you saved
My
me
goodness.
as well.
Once. Oh, there's this guy.
And I did only die because I had to res you. No, I'm kidding. I won't
That's
blame
true,
you.
that's
No,
true.
it's fine. Oh, I did not. Yeah, I didn't expect this guy to be here.
Yeah, Thomas, was that all the features for the patch? I know we have some communication features. I don't know if we were going to talk about those, or I don't know what you guys plan on talking about.
You mean the realm diary and so on, right? Like,
Oh,
if you
yeah,
want to talk
and
about
chat
it,
and
bring it up.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that you know, it's not one of those things that keeps people from playing the game, but it's one of those nice to haves, was just better communication between players if you're not on something like Discord. This is especially important if, you know, we go into things like console and or when we do, we have crossplay. Being able to just, type in something in chat or use sort of quick chats to each other. Things like Thomas is talking about with the realm diary, where when you join a realm, there'll be this list of everything that was done while you were away, or the most recent stuff. So you can be like, oh, what was Thomas up to while I was gone? And it'll be like, Thomas looted this. He, went and upgraded this. He completed this boss, right? Just these small things that are, quality of life, but it helps it sort of with these more asynchronous kind of plays styles when you're not just like in a room with someone in
Exactly.
Discord.
Like you want to have that moment where you get up in the morning, you try Wicked, right? And then you can just check, oh, Patrick was online yesterday at 8 p.m. and he did this and he did that and he got this thing and he put this into the community chest.
Right.
That kind of thing that you don't even have to ask, right? Like the game is just giving you the information.
Yeah, people are asking about voice procs, like prox chat. It's something we've investigated. It's a bit expensive and there's different ways of doing it. So we're looking into some things. I'm not going to promise we'll have it. But yeah, we love games, like Peak, and even games like Call of Duty and Battlefield have proximity voice now, right? So it's something that we feel would lend itself well to our game, especially with crossplay. So you don't have to have Discord running on your phone right at the same time.
We did see a demo that you showed us, and it worked pretty nice.
Yeah, and it's cool because like the way it's being implemented, we have oh god, they're not called Formosa anymore. Are they called Arrival? What are they called now? Their studio, but the audio studio we work with, they were able to implement it in such a way with me and some other the tech guys that you could like simulate people's voices in the world. So if you were in a cave, everything was all echoey. If you were, somewhere more open, it would be more, open sounding. So we've been messing around with it quite a bit. And it was fun when it's working. It's just, it's expensive. It can be costly, both performance wise and, on the actual paying for server cost side. So something we're interested in, for sure. Oops, I was talking too much and I died.
There's other quality of life features. Like we can't mention every single thing, right?
Yeah.
But there's things like, like people have been asking for a long time, like on the map, the display, the Whispers should display their names, right? Those things will come in with patch 1.0.
Yeah, and there's going to be like major bug
for...
fixes and stuff like that as well. So.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Oop.
So obviously, goal is with patch 1 for No Rest for the Wicked Together that we put the game into a really, really good state, right? Because it's going to remain that way for some time to come, unless you join a PTR. In the PTR, there's new features that we are, going to let people test and so on. But on the live stuff, this is where it'll be for some time. Let's go into some other questions. Buyback functionality, that comes up a lot. That is actually not landing in patch 1. That is actually quite complex, right? Maybe, Patrick, you can talk about this. So it's a feature that we definitely will have in 1.0, but not yet in patch 1.
Yeah, so buyback's obviously one of those things where you accidentally sell your item to a vendor and it's gone, right? It sounds simple enough to implement, but there's all sorts of things, even design-wise, that we're looking into. So things like, we have vendors that roll over their items, right, at a certain time during the day. Do they roll over the items that were, sold to them? How long do those last? Can Corey come and buy something that I accidentally sold and realize later that I sold it? And he's like, well, you sold it, so I bought it back. Even things like just tracking items that players put in there. So it's definitely something we're thinking about. And I'd like it to be part of a bigger rework to combine the buy and sell screen, because there's not really much use of them being separate right now in the game. So yeah, we're definitely hearing you guys. It's just one of those things where, on the surface it sounds super easy, but it's just a little bit more complicated due to a few things.
Patrick, another thing that I'm seeing here that came up that you can probably talk to is another quality of life feature. This is talking to vendors simultaneously in multiplayer.
Yeah, so a week or two after we released patch or the multiplayer thing, I hacked that in. The issue is you can get two people to be on the same menu at the same time, and maybe with some screens like buying and selling, it's really easy. But when you get to certain screens like me and Corey accessing the builder screen at the same time, if he were to say put 5 wood into something that takes like 10 wood and I put in 10 wood, and then we both press Y at the same time, how do we communicate to the player that like maybe the items weren't taken from them? Like on the engine side, it's not too hard, but like just the communication side of it, and updating sort of the UI while two people have it open, and that's across a lot of different screens, right? So it's sort of those things that yeah we can implement it, but to make it good and up to the standard that Moon likes to have their features, we would like to spend more time on it. So yeah, we're looking into it. It's one of the things that people even on our team don't like, you know, queuing up into a vendor and just waiting for someone to be done enchanting something so you can buy a certain rune or something, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
that's something that I would love if we had a patch too that I could maybe look into, but it's a bit complicated.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, just to be clear, like a lot of this stuff we want in, right? It's just that it's more complicated than it seems. Like,
Yeah,
yeah, just let people. It seems simple to just be like, yeah, just let two people interact with the vendor, but then
right.
all this stuff comes up on
Yeah,
top of the tech.
and it's like even at the tech level, someone might have implemented a bunch of things thinking that only one person can be interacting with a vendor at the same time, right? And now you have to consider all of those different things, whether it's code, whether it's design, whether it's even the UI or the art. Um, you know, you both can't talk physically to a vendor at the same time. You can't both choose the talk option, so we have to take the top option out for the second person to access it or anybody after that. It's all yeah, all these things stacking on top of each other. Not saying it's impossible, but it's just yeah, we prioritize other things for this patch.
Because I think we should move on probably to the questions that came from Discord. So the way we're gonna do this is that yeah, we're gonna mention the username and then also upvote. Because that's kind of like how we're looking at, you know, what are the questions that people really want answered, right? So we're starting with, you guys have the craziest usernames. With Elrositas. Elrositas had 52 upvotes and asked, can we break down items or recycle them for materials? So this, I'll answer that. We had these discussions recently because of the Sacrament expansion and like us wrapping everything for 1.0. And we are obviously looking at Thanos projects, right? And that kind of thing. Like what you guys have in the game right now is basically the first batch of Thanos projects. It's not the full thing. And stuff like that you can expect to come in with Thanos projects. In general, we would like to kind of like add more things here to, from a design perspective, give us a more natural or organic kind of like tutorialization. Because right now, one thing that I definitely feel is that I just watched my 8-year-old play No Rest for the Wicked for the first time. And immediately that moment when people get to Sacrament for the first time, there's a lot that we are throwing at players, right? Like you go to Eleanor and she has the rune screen and the infuse screen and the enchant thing and so on. And like you need to understand all of it, right? And some of that stuff will actually put behind things that you have to unlock, right? So things like Fillmore being able to salvage, that's a huge discussion that we had recently, right? We'll try that now, but that, for example, would become a Thanos project where you have to kind of like help Fillmore out a little bit, right, in order for that to become a thing. And that kind of like creates this nice organic flow of like, hey, we're not throwing everything in the kitchen sink at you right away, but you'll have to pay for it for a little bit, pay a little bit for it, and then features like that will unlock organically.
Not pay real money.
Next.
Right.
Oh, of course not. Like, so, yeah, just to be clear again, right, regarding... Yeah, just to be clear again, because that also always comes up, right? Like the whole microtransaction thing and so on. We don't have any plans to introduce any microtransactions or anything into Wicked, right? Like we very much like the idea of, hey, you get a game, like you buy the game, you get a game that is full and complete and great, right? And I've been very outspoken, especially recently in interviews, right? Where I think, especially for ARPGs, that whole thing with microtransactions really has a, you know, has a tendency to kind of like corrupt the core gameplay loops, meaning that if you introduce microtransactions on gear, that, you know, then you will definitely make sure that the gear looks great, the gear that you buy looks great, right? But the gear that you actually get in game doesn't look as great, so that people are actually incentivized to buy it. But that creates a really bad incentive and loop, right? Where it's just, hey, ultimately what you're doing with that is that people will play less of your game and you kind of like forcing them to kind of like flash their credit cards more and more often. And you know, we don't really see a need to do that for Wicked. Next question was from Superbird. At 47 uploads, question was, are you planning to change resource gathering? When mining wood or ore, the drops scatter and you have to spend time picking them up. Will it be possible to make it more like fishing where you receive the loot instantly? On that, we will have loot tool rarity in the game. That's something that we're currently working on. And there's a lot of kind of like fun stuff that we'll do with that, right? But we're still prototyping and playing around with that, but we'll have to see.
You talk about something like there's an enchant on some pickaxe, and part of that is that it automatically picks things up, or
exactly, right? Those kind of things that you just as a player, right? That you get these interesting choices of like, hey, do you want the thing that is convenient, or do you want to kind of like challenge yourself, but then potentially get better loot drops and so on from resources? That kind of stuff. Now that we have enchants on tools, there's a lot of crazy stuff that we can do there. Let's see, where are we? Covert Spy had a question with 39 upvotes. There are rune slots on shields. Will we ever see runes on shields? Yes, absolutely. So there's going to be more offhand items. And obviously your shields are offhand, right? And yeah, every shield, just like weapons and so on, will have its own rune slot. Or will come with its own rune. And we'll also introduce new offhand items. Like I've been sitting on the pipes. There's going to be orbs and all kinds of stuff. But we'll go more into detail on that kind of like as we finish it. Then we had a question from Lombix, had 37 upvotes. Have you considered changing the daily quests and vendor refreshes from real-life days to in-game days? Oh my god. We had that conversation many times. Yeah. Let's stick with we'll have to see, right? Because yeah, there's again, like it's not as simple as it may seem right from the get-go.
Yeah, we've talked about all sorts of systems to like maybe you pay a resource in game, you know, to like speed those up, or you do some quest, or you do some specific thing to make vendors, roll over or something.
Thomas, can you talk about why this might be a bad idea and not why we just don't do it? For a second.
Because in general, with the whole in-game thing, right? Like we went through so many kind of like conversations on this so many times, right? With like, and people always kind of like bring up the vendors, right? And how they should be on a schedule, right? And then, hey, when it's night in game, they should actually go and sleep in their beds and so on, right? And then only come back in the morning. But
you might miss
with a lot of this stuff, exactly, right? And then it's like also our in-game loop is not that long, right? So, and you see that in other games, right? Like if you ever played Shenmue, right? Like that was one of the first games where it's like, hey, this is, you know, there's a clock in there. And how many fucking times did you have the issue of, oh, I have to be at a certain vendor or NPC at a certain time, and oops, I missed it by like 1 minute, and now I'm screwed, right? And the real-time thing, ultimately, it still kind of like creates this nice schedule, right? Where you know, hey, if I'm playing today, right now, I have time to do everything that the game throws at me, right? And then right now, I think our refresh is at 5 a.m. every morning. So that you at least know, hey, if I'm looking at a vendor and I see the items that he has, maybe that vendor has some amazing item, right? If we switch it to in-game time, right, what you will ultimately run into is issues where it's like, oh my god, that vendor sells some amazing item today, and I don't have the money for it, so I have to go and get some money, and so I go out there, and, you know, I get the money, I come back, and whoopsie, the day is over, right? The in-game day is over, and whoops, all of the stuff has refreshed, right? And that's just one of the things that comes up. So it's not that simple. The current system that we have is at least like giving you that whole idea of like, hey, everything that the game presents to you, you will be able to get. At the same time, I mean, we do like choice, right? Like there has been discussions on, hey, how can we make Greenwich a little bit more interesting? And so, you know, like with the Denos project and so on, we're looking into things, but that's just one of the reasons why it's not that simple. Let's look at the next one. Animus had 36 upvotes and asked Thomas, what is the single feature of the game you are the most proud of and or excited about?
Pick your favorite child. Go.
Yeah, exactly. Right. It's really hard. Like, I mean, if it's always, for me, it's always the last thing that I worked on, right? Like if I work on the combat system and I do a bunch of really cool stuff, I'm like, I always have to play this class now because it's really fucking cool, right? And Patrick, I'm guessing it's probably the same for you, right? Like if you're working on
Yeah.
farming right now, then it's probably
Yeah.
this whole, oh, farming is so cool. I'm really proud of farming.
Yeah, like I really liked cutting down trees for a long time because I helped implement that. That's not the most exciting thing, but it was the thing I was like proud of. You know, it was fun. So
Exactly. It's
yeah,
that kind of question where it's just ask a musician what his favorite song is of the 100 songs that he has written, right? And it's just
right. The nice thing
Jesus.
about Moon is that people are so passionate about the game that we're making that nobody's being forced to make something that they don't really feel passionate about. And you can feel it in the game, right? It's not like the person who implemented farming hates farming or the person who implemented this boss hates combat, right? You have these people who really, really like the things that they're making and it shows. So I feel like Moon's one of those awesome places where you just get to go from thing to thing like that and just, you know, do your best. So I agree with Thomas. It's always the last thing.
We have X Red Dot asked, or Red Dot asked, had 32 upvotes and asked, we know there will be classes, but is it expected to have more class-based experience where you need tanks, DPS, healers? Well, we're gonna throw a shit ton of challenge at you, right? And then the idea is that we design it in a way where, yes, that makes a lot of sense, right? That you will kind of like organically come to the conclusion of like, hey, Patrick, it would make a lot of sense if you play the cleric and you heal us. And I'll just tank the damage or parry or try to parry as much as possible, right? And then Corey peppers the enemy from the distance, right? But we're not going the traditional kind of like MMORPG route or something where you design the challenge around, no, you absolutely can only defeat this boss if you parry, right? Or if you have gear that is fire resistant or something, right? Like the idea should always be that we give you interesting choices, but it's up to the player basically to find out the solution, right? And it shouldn't usually, to make it rich and deep and so on, I don't think it should just be one solution, right? I always like it when games present puzzles where it's like, hey, this is so clever, I can solve this in like multiple different ways, instead of just having to do exactly the thing that the designer laid out for me.
Yeah, when people have
In many
questions like
ways, that's
that, they
the
have to
thing
keep in
that
mind that like we're also a single player game, not just multiplayer. I know that's what we've been focused on recently, but I don't think we'd ever have something where it's like you need to beat this in multiplayer, you know, because there's a lot of people who like that solo experience. So we have to tune for everybody.
Yeah, I mean everything's
exactly.
always going to be viable. Like I had like a run recently with somebody, and we were both using bows, and you know you always think of this like melee frontline and then the ranged, but like two ranged is totally fine, and then two melee is fine. But once you start getting into the thing of like 4 people in multiplayer at the moment, you sort of have many classes right now where one goes lightning, one goes fire for that overcharge synergy, one goes like tank usually, and then one's like bow. So sort of have that dynamic right now.
Yeah.
I think that will increase even more once the class system is live and like people get it, right? And they really understand fully, oh, a cleric plays like this, so a paladin plays like this and so on, right? But we're not specifically designing the challenges around, no, you can only beat this thing if you're a cleric, right? Or if you're a plague bearer or that kind of thing. That's how we approach it. Let's go to Meltian. Had 32 upvotes and asked, will we be able to buy houses and land in every major hub like Tia, Marin, Havenport, or only in Sacrament? You will be able
Remains
to,
to be
but
seen.
not in... Yes, but not like in 1.0. 1.0, the main hub will still be Sacrament. And I don't really want to spoil the other stuff. But yeah, Tier, and Havenport and so on. Yes, there's player houses there. Marin is a little bit small. Then Nemangar. I'm probably butchering the shit out of these names, but they're very curious, unusual names. So Nemangar with 29 upvotes asked, will the character details UI get more detailed information? I already answered that. That is one of the things that we're working on. Yes, it will absolutely, like, ultimately the goal is that we expose everything, hopefully without overwhelming players too much, right? But that you can completely understand how the math works, how everything works, and so on. That's the idea behind the updated stat screen. Then we had Max Hero 5965 with 29 upvotes asked, would the Compendium explain all the unique enchants, like what qualifies as low health? What additional damage does lightning on a burning enemy do? Yes, absolutely. That's the whole idea behind the Compendium. We always wanted to kind of like have our own little wiki in there, right? So that you don't have to, open your phone and like put the controller or the keyboard mouse aside and then look up on a wiki this or that, right? Like, the whole idea behind the Compendium is that we kind of like have a place inside of Wicked itself where you can, if you don't know how a certain stat works or how certain enchantments work and so on, that you can just read that up. And the thing that I'm always pushing for is there will be the library in Sacrament with various librarians, right? That we also reward you for using the Compendium, so that there's going to be this really nice mix of like I never like it when games have bestiaries and that just exists, right? That's just there. I always like it when there's actually a gameplay value assigned to it. Then we have Blueprints 95414 with 26 upvotes ask, why are the next tier chests twice the size of the world, but offer only a fraction of more space? What's up with that? I think he means the house chests, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something that we're working on. I already, right after we shipped together, to Patrick's chagrin, added like 2 or 3 times the house items that we have.
Yeah.
And we never had scrolling, for example, and those are the kind of things that people don't think about, right? Like, but we have a certain slot size on the UI, and we need to make sure that actually works on all platforms and so on. And we never had scrolling there, and it's also really annoying to have scrolling in those things. But there's definitely more chests and more things like that we're introducing. So hopefully that answers the question. We have Lombix again with 25 upvotes. So that guy apparently asked some really good questions. Yeah. Can dummies become furniture that you can place in your house and test things more comfortably? Yes. Absolutely. Like, we should 100% do that. It would be really fun to have a dummy in the house. Yeah, so it's not in the game
target
yet,
dummy.
but I absolutely want to make that happen. Yeah, exactly. That you can just buy the target dummy as a furniture or craft it. Commander Max asks with 24 upvotes, can we please have the ability to drop items instead of needing to wait for friends to accept the trade, or simply letting anyone with their inventory space pick up an item? Probably not. Patrick, maybe you can go into that.
Yeah.
Like, why don't we allow people to drop thousands of items in our world?
So we did have that at one point. When your inventory overflows, there's that little dropped item bag, right? That's essentially what we had. Was you could just drop any item anywhere. And what ended up happening was people would just drop hundreds and hundreds of items all over the map. And performance reasons, it's bad, but it also wasn't really the experience we wanted with trading. You just leave something behind, because eventually we have to despawn those bags. And let's say I dropped something for Corey and I was like, oh, I left it in the coast for you because my inventory was full. And he's like, well, that was like 30 minutes ago. And then turns out 30 minutes is how long we clear those.
And suddenly your unique item is gone.
And suddenly it's gone, right? We wanted the trading to be more collaborative, more conversational, right? I'll put this in this chest for you. I'll trade this with you next time I see you. If you're at the point where you have so many items that you can't possibly pick up one more and nobody else is around you, I feel like it's almost, you should just go and drop some stuff off because you're going to keep running into that, and you'll just like leave a trail of dropped item breadcrumbs behind you, which isn't
This goes
really.
all the way back to Diablo 1, right? Like where the best way to store your gold was like, oh, just drop it in the town right next to all the
Right,
NPCs and so on. And you just had every single lot of space in like Tristram was like just gold.
right. So yeah, it's just a design choice we
But yeah,
made, you know? Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Silex Immortal with 21 upvotes asked, will there be a way to tone down allied visuals? It's often hard to see with some quivers magic flying around.
Yeah, we've talked about it in the leads calls with VFX. They're aware of it. They're trying to make it so those kinds of things aren't so like, all over the place and in your face. I don't have an answer on where that is or if that's in patch 1. I'm not sure, but it's something we're aware of for sure.
I think we're still a little bit overboard with the way we set up the VFX for the quivers and so on, right? I think that needs to be pulled back quite a bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that generally always comes up, right? Even the whole thing of like, hey, sometimes when you play with 4 players on the screen, that you kind of like lose the sense a little bit of like, who are you playing right now, right? I'm sure towards 1.0, we'll fix more and more of those things and add more quality of life to make it super clear.
People are just saying that when you read the question, you're facing away from the mic, so it might be hard to hear you.
Okay.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, let me actually move that over now.
There you go.
Yeah, sorry guys, I'm actually like looking at it on my second screen. Okay, let's do this. This is nicer.
I just wanted to address a question in Twitch chat real quick. We have been answering somebody said that we're rude for not answering questions in Twitch chat. It's just this segment is based on the Discord questions right now. We have been answering other questions that have been in chat during the rest of the stream. So if you do repost your question, we'll probably get to it. I can't promise because there's a lot of people in here, but we'll try our best to answer your questions. We're not ignoring you on purpose, I promise.
We'll jump into the chat right after this, right? We just want to make sure that, hey, the people that got a chance to kind of like ask on Discord and got a lot of upvotes, that we are tackling those questions, because that's then obviously questions that lots of people wanted answers for.
Yep.
We have Wilder here with 19 upvotes. Wicked promised visceral Souls-like combat, new systems, difficult settings, crit chance, percentage in gems, broader Suma ARPG experience. This game does not give the unforgiving combat many of us would like. Will there be anything for us in 1.0 or beyond? That's even like for patch 1. A lot of that stuff will be fixed, right? Like the idea was never that we that we kind of like create screen wipe kind of like gameplay, right? And there were just, this always happens if you have a game as complex as Wicked with as many stats and that kind of thing. There will be things that you miss. There will be things like, hey, one thing had an effect on another, and whoops, so even with patch 1, we are pulling some of that back, right? The idea is not that it becomes Sumia, right? The idea is always that, no, it has to remain tactical, strategic, and, more on the Soul side than on the kind of like Path of Exile side and so on. Then we had Ardamonov Alexander with 18 upvotes ask, will there be dungeons in the game other than Crucible that have a more classic MMO format, like in World of Warcraft, a long traversal of one large location with several bosses, designed for co-op player interaction? Well, we'll have to see, right? Like, there's going to be all new zones that are being created and so on. The Crucible gets all new stuff and so on, right? Like, I don't necessarily really want to give away everything that we're doing with 1.0 yet. Then, Jesus Christ, NVMRR had a question with 13 upvotes. Are there plans to diversify the quest system with more varied objectives and activities beyond traditional fetch quests, NPC errands across the map, or simple kill X enemies tasks? Absolutely. So, with part of the class system, is also introducing factions into the game, and that has been discussed quite a lot internally already, right? Like, we always wanted to have that. We always kind of like wanted for you to kind of like have more things to do. So if you want to join the Severed Hand faction that is all about becoming a murderer and an assassin, right, or a rogue, those kind of things, then we'll send you on quests that, really play into this playstyle, right? Even like story-wise, that
Severed
are
Hand
set up
leaks.
that way, right? Where you can... Sorry, what?
I was just saying severed hand leaks live on the stream. I just don't know if it's been mentioned. But
I'm known for leaking stuff, so it doesn't matter.
He's passionate about the game.
Yeah, so there's factions coming in like that, right? Where absolutely, even for the challenges and bounties, right? A lot of that stuff kind of like was thrown in because it was fast to create, right? But we'll absolutely kind of like add more variety there. Then we had Barn Wizard with 10 upvotes asking, are there any plans for adding more advanced elements? Currently, there are only 3, Searing, Fester, Overload. 4 if you include Shatter, and we should include Shatter. That's basically the 4th one. Again, we'll have to see. People always ask that, right? Are we gonna add more elementals like Holy and so on, right? The first thing is always, let's add more elements and combinations and so on as we play. There is, I don't know if I should mention that yet, but there is a huge thing planned regarding gems. Let's actually leave that for the next time, because that's going to be, I think, interesting for people to hear. But design goal is always, first, let's make sure that we squeeze everything, like squeeze that whole design space as much as we can with what we have, right? And then let's expand if we see that, hey, we can't do certain things anymore with the features that we have. And now, I would say let's actually jump into the chat. So what are the questions? So now I'm reading the live chat. So what are the questions that people have?
Somebody was asking if we're going to introduce transmogs or glamour system.
Yeah, that always comes up. So I've said that before. I don't love transmog systems if they are unconstrained. If it's literally like, hey, I'm playing a plate build and I look like a cloth build, right? Especially for things like PvP that really screws things up. Patrick, maybe you also have an opinion on this?
For transmogging?
Yeah,
I mean, things like PvP we could get around with, like, not showing your, your transmogs, but I do tend to agree it'd be weird if, like, I'm a mage, but I'm running around in, like, this, like, decked out sweet knight armor. And I don't know, I think it feels kind of weird in our game because a lot of our items are tied to the enchants that are on it, the upgrades that you put on them. You could just have, like, a level 1 transmog that sort of changes the way you look. It just seems a bit odd to me, but
I'm also much more in favor of, like, it's not that difficult in Wicked even right now, right, to kind of like craft the items.
Right.
So why wouldn't you just craft it, right? Like, we do want to incentivize players to, like, hey, if you really like a particular look, I'll go craft that item and make it great, right? But just basically having like, oh, this is the skin that I want and now I wear it on everything and so on, it kind of like, there's a little bit of a thing where it feels like it cheapens it to me.
And the same thing with people are asking like, oh, at least let us change the colors. It's like, well, that'd be really easy if we just put a color modifier on it and like change the tint of it. But a lot of our armor was created to look a certain way. And so an armor set that's red, if you just apply like a red tinge to it or a blue tinge to it, it's not going to look good, right, with the other color. So it's just things that, like, if we were something a little more easy, like Minecraft with a simpler art style, it'd probably be easier to do something like that. But we have a lot of details and even shading in the colors that make that kind of difficult.
Exactly. Let's see. Corey, did you see any other questions that pop up again?
I did, but they're just out of my mind now, so please re-say them. It's just that, I've been reading.
People are asking if we're going to introduce like favoriting and locking items. I don't think we directly talked about that. Not at the moment. I know it's something we've talked about. We'd like to, because obviously selling something that you don't want to sell accidentally is a bad experience. Also, marking items as trash, right? So like, let's say you don't care about, I don't know, some sort of poise potion ever, right? And you just want to always sell it anytime you go to the vendor. Those are things we're aware of. Those are quality of life things we would love to put in. We just haven't had the time to focus on those. Yes, we're hearing you. we definitely like those ideas.
Profnet, yes. Question: do we want to tie armor to class? That's something that we're still playing with. Not necessarily like tying one thing in a hard way to that, right? But it's definitely something that, like, I've set it up. I basically went through all our armor sets and said kind of like, hey, what is the class for that, right? But we'll still have to see what we're doing there. There's also our systems guys want to introduce set bonuses for the items. So we'll have to see kind of like how things play out as we really hardcore kind of like test the class system.
Yeah, just speaking of, like, I don't want to go too much into this, but you
No
mentioned...
guns.
Unless... Gun bows, though.
Gun bows and gun wands.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
So bow guns I'm fine with, right? Like these little crossbows
See?
that you... Like we had that in the game for some time. We just couldn't finish it. But there were these little bow guns that you shot like with one hand. Something like that I would be okay with. I just don't want like, you know, like it always kind of like opens up that Pandora's box of like you introduce a gun into a game. At some point, inevitably, it will be, oh, now I have machine guns, right? And it's just...
Yeah,
no,
your bow gun's
it's
just
not
quick.
Right.
Yeah.
I completely forgot what I was going to say, though.
I hate
Oh,
this-
sorry, I didn't want to interrupt.
No, it'll come back to me. I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, I remember.
It's this enemy that's what we gotta focus.
You were mentioning one thing, I don't want to go into it too much, but you mentioned set bonuses. Another reason why we maybe can't do like transmog, it just would be a bit weird, because if you base a certain set off a bonus, then you're transmogging like all your stuff into different things. I don't know, maybe that's fine, but I just, in these games, I'm not a big fan of transmogs myself, but yeah, I know a lot of people are into the fashion souls, stuff like that.
Someone says, please enable cheering so they can give us bits. I don't think we stream enough to do that, unfortunately.
I got a question here. Patrick, any plans on pets and an animal team or class?
Oh, yeah, so it's something we've talked about and we'd love to do. The difficult thing about pets is, one, and it's always the big thing, is like having them pathfind around player place things. So let's say we have a pet just in your house, right? We'll just take that example. And you place like a path where it can't quite move. You know, it might look janky, or even if you have pets follow you around in Sacrament, you have the same issue, right? Where they have to follow you around and up and down ladders, and they'll just kind of like poof into existence some places. So we're trying to figure out, if we do pets, how we'd want to implement them, if they're just something that sits static in your house and gives you a buff, or you can feed them, or what. I definitely like pet mechanics in games, but we'll just have to see how it fits in with the rest of the game. Yeah, everybody at Moon has like a pet pretty much. So
Dawn Shadow asked if that I should speak a little bit about the callout system. So for people that don't know, there is a system that I've been working on named the callout system, where it literally just gives you a small hints on like how you played, right? Meaning that if you just performed a fatality, it makes that clear, right? Because right now we have a lot of these mechanics in the game where, yes, fatalities are a thing. And then even the enchantment system, there are some enchantments that reward you for performing a fatality, but it's not necessarily like super clear when you kill two enemies at once, like, did you perform a fatality or how, right? That kind of thing. And then also just the enchantment system will also work with the callout system, where if you played really well and stylish and so on, right, that, there's going to be enchantments for that, right? So that reward you if you played in a really stylish, cool way. If you played the class the way it was meant to be played, right? If you're playing the assassin and you're playing, super sneaky like a ninja, right? That's the idea. It's just basically really nice feedback for the player.
Somebody asked if you were going to introduce stealth mechanics for the assassin class.
Yes, I'm already working on that. Yeah, so obviously, like that, I think is really cool, because I've also not really seen that done well yet in a Souls-like or in games with Souls-like combat systems, right? where you can play in a really stealthy way, and especially kind of like have runes like, oh, I can go invisible, right? Or the sidling. I always kind of like, we for years had this whole thing where the team internally kind of like fought this battle against me with like they wanted to cut sidling, but I always wanted to have it in there for like, you know, ultimately to add kind of like sneaking and so on, because that is such a fun playstyle to me. So yeah, I'm already working on that right now. Oh, Patrick, this one's good. Can we have an ability to switch places for runes inside a weapon, right? So that if you
Oh
have
yeah,
a weapon
yeah,
right now on X,
yep.
that it goes to
Yeah, I
Y
would love
and so
that
on, that kind of.
because some items have like, you know, a rune on X that you want to put on A by default, and yeah, that's 100% something we want in 1.0, and it ties a little bit into class system too, because there's some like rune reworking there for like, you know, the classes and stuff. So that is something we will look into, not for patch 1, but for multiplayer for sure, or for 1.0. Sorry.
Nobus here asked rune words. So I already mentioned that we're doing something with gems. Just wait for it. So I don't want to really spell it out yet.
People want to know about mounts, Thomas. Are we going to have horses in the game?
No.
No,
And horse armor,
we are not.
please.
Just no,
Horse armor.
no. Like, guys,
I want
we
$300
are
horse
spending
armor.
so much time on designing these levels to be really intricate and crazy, and like, you know, like there's no way, like, just look at the gameplay that you see here right now, right? Like, how in the world would you reverse this stuff with a horse? And also, like, generally with horses, right? Like, there's so many issues in fucking games with horses. Like, I rarely see games that do horses well. And even if they do it, then, you know, like it requires level design changes and so on. Like we don't have any immediate
And same thing
idea
for
of
things
like
like
putting horses in the game.
paragliders and grapple hooks that other people are asking about. Most likely, no. Those won't happen because we didn't design the levels in that way. Like paragliding down from the mountain right now would be, you know, we'd have to change a lot of design just based on that. So probably not. No.
Yeah, it would be cool though, but yeah.
It would be. Maybe someone can make a mod it unofficial, but yeah, we most likely will not be doing that because it would require many changes.
People ask for more vanity items, so yeah, I think that we do want more sort of quote-unquote gold sinks. Not really gold sinks to waste your money on, but just more stuff to spend, more money to buy. So yeah, there's going to be more like housing stuff as well. So I think somebody asked that as well, if there's going to be more housing items. Yeah, we're always working on that.
Also, more funny items, right? Like that's what they mean sometimes. I would love to do that, right? Like so many people love to play with the paddle, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why we don't have a frying pan in the game yet, or those kind of things, right?
There's
Like
some
we
stuff.
definitely should, or
Like
umbrella.
I don't want to
Yeah,
ruin it.
Yeah,
But
there is some
there's
stuff.
some stuff coming already with 3, 4, and 5, and so on, and 6. Yeah, there is some stuff like horse on a stick,
Yeah.
right? That kind of.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Or sword. Yeah.
Massive shark.
Yeah. Someone asked if there's any misconceptions about the game that the community has that you'd like to address. I thought that was an interesting question. I don't have any answer, but I wondered if you do.
I don't know. It's mostly this thing, right? Like we're designing Wicked in a way that I haven't necessarily seen, right? Because we have this luxury that we can just design our dream game, right? And not necessarily just make it just like X, right? And the nice thing that we've seen is that, well, that kind of like worked out now, right? Like people really enjoyed what we did with No Rest for the Wicked together and where the game is right now. And, you know, I think people got a much better idea now, kind of like where we're heading with Wicked and how things work and so on. I used to see a lot of like, especially when we launched into early access originally, and some of the systems didn't work as tightly together yet, right? That people claimed like, oh, we don't know where we want to go with this whole game in terms of the design direction and so on. But frankly, like that never, like in my head, the game that I had in my head like all these years ago when we first like did the first prototypes, it never really changed that much from like my vision really has been fairly consistent. So Yeah, we just want to kind of like create this really cool kind of like world that you can live in, and bring in a lot of these mechanics that we really love, and make it multiplayer, and tell the story that we always wanted to tell, and combine a lot of these things, right? Like things that we grew up with playing in, like Zelda, Diablo, um, the Soul series, and so on, and try to really find that perfect recipe, right? Of just creating a new subgenre because of how we weave things together.
Someone asked, will there be any plans to be able to deflect projectiles like they can with parry? I don't know if you want to talk about.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes. So that
something
is
we just
already there now,
implemented
right?
2
I
weeks
don't know
ago.
if that is actually. Yeah,
So
exactly. So I don't know if that is actually. Yeah, Corey, go ahead.
it's
Good.
in his like flag, but it's not like in the game right now. It's not like enabled. It's maybe some
Right.
stuff we could do with the class system.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that
But
sounds interesting.
definitely, like the answer is yes, absolutely, right? Like parry should not just work on melee, right? Like it would be really fun to have lots of things there, like way more uses for that.
I have another interesting one if you want. Um, Someone was asking if we'll ever have a different type of build mode in the game that's not player constrained. So like right now you have to like place a chest, orient your character to it instead of something like, being able to place it with the mouse or place it with the free cam. I would love something like that. I don't know if we will do something like
Yeah.
that because I know, Thomas, you have a vision for building, but it's something we've always considered.
I think that would be cool, right? Like for
Yeah.
especially for keyboard and mouse, like I would actually enjoy that.
Okay.
But yeah, we'll have to see, right? Like this is always difficult because of the whole
Yeah.
oh, it has to work with keyboard and mouse, and it has to work with a controller, right? And so on.
Yep.
So, but I would love to see kind of like, more quality of life stuff there for the housing, right? So that you actually see the grid on the ground as you place things.
Yeah. Or even
These
something
kind of
like
things.
when you're placing an item near the wall, it doesn't just go into the wall, it just smushes towards the wall to wherever you could sort of place it. So you're not always fighting with just like a little tiny piece of the wall trying to put it in. Like it tries to find like the best
Exactly.
place that it fits. Small quality of
And
life things like that will
automatically
make it a lot.
snaps it and so on. Yeah,
Yeah, or
exactly.
snapping mode or grid or yeah.
Let's see. Are we adding ultimates for each class? Yes. So yes. So that's a thing that I can already say. Yeah, every class will have their archetypes, and ultimate is one of them, right? So that there's, so that you're working towards your class, right? And then, if you find the correct weapon, right, that it comes with that particular rune that then finishes your build, and that then has the ultimate, like the ultimate rune in it. See, I'm just scrolling around here.
People keep asking
Yeah, it's
about like
questions about grab runes.
yeah.
It's always just really difficult to design these, right? Like it's easy if your game would just be humanoids, right? But we always have these issues with like, oh, here's a grab, right? But now your grab has to work on like, unlike a fighting game, right? Like where it's just humanoids for the most part, right? Here we have like, oh my god, like how do I do a grapple on a boss? And what about a wolf? And what about an elite? And so on. And like all these different rigs and so on. So it's always just difficult to do.
Someone asked, can they mix and match their perks from different classes to create their own classes?
Yes, that is the whole goal behind the class system, right? That
Yep.
you can, that we throw a ton in already in terms of traits and runes and so on, right? But then you can mix and match to kind of like come up with your own thing. So if you want to play, an assassin rogue type character that also, does archery stuff and so on, yes, you will absolutely be able to. ranked PvP, we kind of like answered that before already.
Invasions is sort of the same thing. Like maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll have to see. Obviously, like I think first step is that we put the arena in and like
Yeah.
people have fun, right? And we should like in terms of the arena, like the thing that I really love about this whole thing is like I've been looking at Power Stone recently and a lot of these games, right? I think people will really enjoy what we'll have there, because we already spent so much time on like refining the combat system, and I think the potential that is there for the arena becoming super cool is like huge, simply because of, hey, it's a 3D fighting game, and I haven't really seen much being done in that regard, right? Like we went from 2D fighting games to basically 2.5D fighting games, because calling the 3D fighting games that we're currently calling 3D fighting games 3D is a little bit of a stretch, because you're usually not using the environment, you're usually not you know, like able to run around in like 360 degrees. So I think people will really enjoy that. And I mean, I grew up with 8 and 16-bit consoles and so on, right? And playing games like Worms and Bomberman and so on. I think the PvP thing will also just be insanely fun when it comes to from a party game perspective, right? Like I'm looking forward to having our team retreat where we just all play PvP against one another in the arena, right? And then doing a tournament right there.
Yeah, somebody asked, can I play this game as a comfy game like Harvest Moon? Not quite, but there are
Soon TM.
there are elements like that, and we will introduce farming as well. So you kind of can, but there is still like a massive combat component to the game. But I will say, if you're playing multiplayer, one thing I was going to mention when we're talking about farming is that if one of your friends really likes farming, they can just be the farmer for your group forever.
So we are approaching the 2-hour mark.
I think most of the questions have been maybe answered as well.
Yeah, let's maybe do 2 more minutes so we land at the 9 p.m. and then let's see. Oh my god, now people are spamming the chat like crazy.
Yeah, I know, right? They're like, the last 2 minutes, go!
Good luck.
I can't even read
even
these
read
anyway.
we don't even have slow mode or anything.
Yeah.
I need to pause the chat to read like one
Help.
thing. Somebody asked if optimizations will still be ongoing for Steam Deck. Always. Like, we will never stop that.
Yes. Yeah, guys, regarding the armor system, yeah, there's a lot that we're doing there, right? To make sure that, you know, plate has a particular reason, mesh has a particular reason to be used, cloth, leather, and so on. We did first steps there with together, but that'll, like, you will see us doing more of that. Guys, if I would answer the secret, it wouldn't be secret anymore, so I'm not.
Right?
What was the secret? I don't even know the secret.
And I don't either. But don't say anything.
I'm not gonna tell you the secret.
Oh.
It wasn't the secret snowman that we had in the game for a bit. He's gone now.
Only me and Ron Gilbert know the secret.
Oh my god. Is that a hint?
Take the first letter of every second. No.
If you rearrange it, it says, I am Lord Voldemort. I don't know.
What are some DLC ideas that you can share? Well, I'll definitely, for example, like last year I prototyped the survival mode, and that's not something that we can necessarily put into Wicked, into the ARPG campaign as is, right? Because it drastically changes the rule set. But that is something, for example, after 1.0 that I would really like to see us handle, right? Because I'm frustrated with survival games right now. I think the idea and the core game loop of survival games I really love, but then there's this problem in the industry, right? Where it's just, if you would ever right now pitch a survival game to a AAA publisher and you go, oh, and I want the survival game to have combat as deep as Elden Ring, you would get shown the door, right? But that's where I really love how we built Wicked basically as a platform, because, well, we can do it, you know, and I think, you know, that's going to be really interesting. All of the stuff that we can squeeze out of Wicked.
I think that's our last question, maybe, unless you guys see another one. But
There's a
Let's
few.
ask. There's one more. There's one more here regarding. Are you going to be limited with how many classes you skill? Right now you aren't, right? Like right now it's just, hey, we'll. There's some horizontal with slight vertical scaling with the class system, but we're not limiting you right now, so that you can really have that unlimited experience of just spending hundreds of hours in Wicked without getting bored. Corey, there was one that you saw.
That's literally the one that I was going to comment on. I was going to say there's a few things about the
Oh.
class system being asked, but most of them being answered. But I was going to say point that one out.
Okay. Guys, so we tried our best to answer all the questions that came up and so on, right? There will be more from us that you will hear more from us really soon. But I think this is probably a good spot to wrap it because we still have lots and lots of work to do. So I would say with that, kind of like we should wrap it up. I hope you guys enjoyed seeing Patrick and Corey play a little bit. I hope, like your questions got answered. Last thing before we drop though is Corey, we should solve the secret regarding who got the keys.
Yes, so just stall for me for a minute, maybe read another question, and I'll sort that out.
Well, I just wanted to say, like, thank you for all the good questions. We would love to just sit here and discuss with you guys all day, but like Thomas said, we need to actually ship the game. But you guys have been a really great
We
community.
also have a job to do.
Yeah, we can't just be a streamer, right? Last time Corey and I and Chris were in charge of the stream, it was supposed to be an hour and a half and went 3 hours, right? Because we were having so much fun talking to you guys. So I really just want to thank you guys for being a great community. It's been a lot of fun.
Yep. I actually
Absolutely.
couldn't get the thing sorted. Let me just I need to hide you guys, and I'll just do it quickly. Just take 1 minute.
No.
So just stall.
Now we'll see a screen where it says 5 times Corey.
Corey won all the keys. It's an inside job.
What a coincidence.
You guys want to know how much I love farming if my camera's still on? I have a little farming Patrick here because my name's Patrick and I like farming. So, and it's gone. Okay, that's fine. That was my stall. Give me a drum roll. It is. Yep.
I think we see it. Key giveaway winners. Yeah, I'll read it out. So the key
Good luck.
giveaway winners today are Melfina61, Inkheart, Beskman, fuck my life, Otsuki Hana, and Scavenger Stefan. There you go. Guys, you all get a free key for No Rest for the Wicked. We hope you really enjoy playing with us, right? We really hope you enjoy kind of like seeing where we're taking this early access, and we hope, well, we were able to answer a bunch of questions. Very soon, you guys will all be able to play the No Rest for the Wicked together patch 1, and I hope you'll join us on this way, after that on our journey to finalizing the game.
Mm-hmm.
But that's it. I would say let's wrap with that. Patrick, Corey, thanks for spending your time today, and thank you everybody who joined in this stream. It was quite a bit of fun.
Yep. Thanks very much, guys.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Bye, everyone.
See ya.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.